earlier video, we saw this nice little short syntax for creating getters and setters in C#. That's great if you don't have any actual logic that needs to go in here, but what if you did? So this is great if it's just really simple, but sometimes you get something that's not simple. The whole point behind getters and setters is usually to enforce some sort of business logic or business rule around what you're actually doing. And when I say business rule, that's just a generic term for what we usually do. You can call it a rule if that makes you feel less corporate. So in this case, we have a few additional attributes. I'm still working on the same character class that we've been working with all along, but I've added some extra attributes, and right now they'll show up as regular public properties. The problem with this is the rules in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, as we used to play it when we were young, is that these numbers are all between 3 and 18. You determine them by rolling 3 6-sided dice. So you can't just stick any integer in there. You have to be between 3 and 18. So why don't we implement this business rule that says that we have to be between 3 and 18, and to do that we're going to have to change the way our getters and setters work. The first thing I have to do, since I'm not using this sort of shortened syntax, is I have to create a private variable to hold my data. So I'll create a private integer, and I'll call it strength. And the next thing I'll do is I'll create a getter and setter for it, but instead of doing it the long way like we did before, I'm going to use the shortened C# syntax for it. It's not as short as the auto property gets set, but it is quite a bit nicer than the old school Java way. So I'm going to do a get, and I'll just go ahead and do the set, and you just set it up like this. And from here on out, it's pretty straightforward. The getter doesn't matter. We're pretty much just going to do a regular get. So I'm going to return strength. But the setter does. The setter needs to make sure (3 and 18). All right, to do this, we need a new statement that you haven't seen yet, and it's called the if statement. The if statement is used for flow control in C#. It's very common in most languages, and pretty much they all look the same, especially in C-based languages. You use the keyword if, you use a set of parentheses, and within that parentheses you put some expression that evaluates to true or false. We have in this getter and setter shortened syntax a hidden variable in here that's just sort of there. You wouldn't know it was there if you weren't taking the class or reading a good book on C#. So kudos, you've saved yourself a little bit of pain by watching this video. The variable is called value. So it's just sort of there. You don't have to worry about it. It's whatever the value is that the programmer is setting this to. So we can actually say if value is greater than 2, and I'll stop there. I'll just do the first part of this so you can see the expression work in a fairly straightforward manner. I'll set strength equal to value. So again, value is that built-in value, that built-in variable that you get with this setter syntax. So here I'm saying, pretty straightforward, if value is greater than 2. Like I said, this has to evaluate to true or false. So it will either be true or false. Some other things that I could put in here, less than 2, less than or equal. You get the idea. Most of those inequality things that you learned in 10th grade math class. Greater than 2, whatever. If you want to do equals, you got to do 2 equals. This is a comparison operator. If you do 1 equals, you're assigning. If you do 2 equals, you're comparing. We're just going to go greater than 2. You could say greater than or equal to 3. That's fine. If you want to do it that way, that's cool. But I do greater than 2 just because there's no ambiguity there. Now we have a need to do 2 comparisons, right? So we need to know if it's greater than equal to 3 or less than, in this case, 19. So I'll use 2 ampersands to denote an and I'll say value less than 19. So now we have a nice little setter here that will set the value if it's between 3 and 18. But what if it's not? What do we do with it then? You could just leave it like this and just not allow the property to be set, but that's kind of dirty pool. That's, at this point, the person that's using your class, whether that's you or somebody else, doesn't know that they've made a mistake, and that's not a good situation to leave somebody in. So what you want to do is you want to let them know that this is wrong, you can't do this. So I'm going to add an else statement to this. So if neither of these are true, then whatever's in this block is going to execute next. And in this case, I'm going to throw an error. And I'm going to tell them strength must be between 3 and 18. You set it to there we go. Okay, so let's try it out. I'll switch back over to main where I have instantiated my character. I'll say my character dot strength equals 8, which is legal. And if I run this, nothing will happen. Sometimes nothing is a good thing. And that's fine. But if I set it to 28, which is illegal, I should see an error message. And it'll say, unhandled exception, strength must be between 3 and 18, you set it to 28. So you can see that's pretty easy to throw a custom error with your own text in it. Don't just leave that blank, otherwise no one will know what's going on. But it would be pretty easy to figure out what's going on here, and it would be just as easy to correct it. And I like being grammatically correct wherever I can. There. Now I'm yelling at them with an exclamation point. So you get the idea. You can throw these exceptions anywhere in your program, and it's the right thing to do. You want to know when you've made a mistake. So that's it. You've seen a few neat things here. You've seen a better way to do a getter and setter when you have actual logic in it. You've seen some flow control, and you've seen a basic custom rolled exception.